Good morning one and all. Welcome to my channel. So today we shall start with the summary of lesson 5. What is moral action? Which is written by M.K. Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. To tell you about the poet, M.K. Gandhi or Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was the greatest of contemporary Indians and certainly one of the great men of all times. His method of non-violence and truth won freedom for India without bloodshed. It was he who demonstrated that love is more powerful than the nuclear bombs. This is all about M.K. Gandhi. So in this lesson, what is moral action? Gandhiji talks about morality and being moral. What is moral? What is morality? He begins the lesson by asking the question, what action is said to be moral? What action is said to be moral? He says most of our day-to-day actions are probably immoral because they are done with some intention. Our day-to-day activities are done with some intention. Yes, of course, if this is not there, then what happens? If we don't follow any rules, what will happen? There will be anarchy. What is this anarchy? Where there is no government authority. If there is no rule, no regulation, no government, no law and order to follow, then the day-to-day activities or whatever we follow will not be in proper order. So these are the activities which we do day-to-day and where following of a rule is necessary. The author says, an act to be moral must be our own act. It must spring from our own will. It should not be mechanical. It should not be intentional. Both these things should not be there. Neither it should be mechanical nor it should be intentional. So to explain this, the author gives the example of a king. If the king pardons a culprit, then the act of the king is said to be moral. If a person has done something wrong, he is a culprit. So he is brought before the king and the king hears to all the story of the culprit, what wrong he has done, and then finally decides and says that let him be excused. No punishment will be given to that person. If the king does this, if he forgives, if he pardons the culprit, then the act is said to be moral. Because the king, he himself, thinks that it is not a very big thing, so let him not be punished. That act is said to be moral. But if there is a messenger in the court where the king holds this meeting, but the act of the messenger has to obey the orders of the king. So if the messenger is doing this act, listening to the king, he follows the orders of the king. The messenger's act is said to be mechanical. It has not sprung from within. It is a mechanical act. He is following the orders of the king. The messenger is only following the order of the king and doing as the king says. So it's a mechanical act and the messenger's act is said to be immoral. It is not a moral act. But when the same was done by the king, it was said to be moral. Here, the messenger who obeys the orders of the king, he has no feelings, he has no emotions for that culprit. He only does his duty. Therefore, it is an immoral act. But in case, if the messenger has emotions, has feelings for the culprit, if he has for the culprit, then the act can be said to be moral. But now if he follows the orders of the king, it is said to be an immoral act. Here the author gives one more example. It is of the great hero, Wendell Phillips. Wendell Phillips was an American orator, and he was a social reformer who fought for slavery. So in one of his speeches, Wendell Phillips once said that, "Till you learn from your opinions and express them, I do not care much what you think of me." These were the words said by Wendell Phillips in one of his speeches. Here, if each one of us cared about our conscience, our inner hearing, and did accordingly, then our acts would surely be said to be moral. But for this, each one of us should believe that good is within us and witnesses to all our acts. Good should be within us, and we should feel that God is witnessing us. Then only it is said to be moral. We can be that whatever act we are doing, we can be good. And if we feel that God is seeing us, we should have it within us. We should not do with the fear of God again. We should have within us. So the author says an act should not be intentional also. We should not do any act with some intention of getting a good name, fame, or because of some wealth, because of some prize, because of some reward. We should not do with some intention. Here the author gives the example of a man who feeds the poor. If a man feeds the poor with the intention of prestige, selfish end, with a good name and fame, that his name appears in the newspaper the very next day. So with this intention, if he does, then his act is said to be immoral because he is doing it with some intention. But if the same man feeds the poor with pity, out of pity if he feeds the poor person, then his act is said to be moral because here he is not having any intention. The result of an action is not under our control. God alone is the giver of a fruit. In our day-to-day life also, we do so many acts. We shouldn't expect something from others. We should do because we feel happy in doing so. We feel satisfied in helping somebody. Help. But don't help with the intention that tomorrow he may help us back. Today I do something because I may get a prize. I do something because I get a reward. No. You do because you feel happy by doing so. You do because you feel satisfied in your life. Another example the author gives is of Emperor Alexander. Alexander is said to be great king. He is a great emperor, king. He is said to be great because of his conquests. He was a famous conqueror. But whenever he conquered the territories, he used to spread Greek language, Greek culture, the manners, and he would spread the Greek civilization. And he was known to be great because of his conquests. He would get a good name, fame by this. So here, King Alexander, Emperor Alexander, his acts cannot be said to be moral because he is doing it with some intention that he will get a good name, good fame. He is doing in order to spread Greek civilization. So his acts are not moral. But of course, Emperor Alexander is said to be a great king. He is great, but his acts are not moral. Just understand that a person should not have any intention behind doing an act. If he has some intention, it is not moral. If he does not have any intention, he should not have any intention, then it is moral. So why Alexander, King Alexander is not said to be, his acts are not said to be moral? Because he conquered the territories in order to get a good name, good fame, in order to spread the Greek civilization. Therefore, his acts are not moral. But of course, he is a great king. What do we come to know from all this? An act should be not with any intention. It should be with, we can say, with a good intention, not with any intention of name, fame, wealth or so. It should not be with compulsion. It should not be with compulsion. Nothing should be compulsory. It should not be with any compulsion. There is no morality if I do an act with compulsion or fear. If I do with compulsion, then it's not a moral act. Here, in order to explain this, examples are being given in the textbook. If a person goes to the office on time and is never late, the person will go to an office and he is never late. Why he is never late? With the fear that he may lose the job. Daily, if you are going late to office, one day the boss will tell you goodbye. If you are going late to school, the principal will send a letter to your parent. Why do we go? Why the teachers come on correct time to school? Why the children follow rules? It is because of the fear that the principal will take an action. Yes, acts should not be done with fear or compulsion. Such acts are said to be immoral. If they are done with fear, if they are done with compulsion, they are said to be immoral acts. A person is going to the office on proper time just because of the fear of his boss. What is the fear? The fear is that he may lose the job. There is some selfish motive. Sincerity is needed for morality. There is one more example which is given here, that is of a rich person. A rich person may lead a simple life after having all the wealth and riches, because he wants to lead a simple life. He doesn't want a luxury life. Then his act is said to be moral. But if a poor man leads a simple life, he is not having riches, he is not having wealth, he leads a simple life because he has to lead a simple life. There is no other way for him. Then his act is not said to be moral. One more example given is of the employer and the employees. If the employer pays higher wages to his employees with the fear that he may leave the job, then it is not a moral act. It is immoral. But if the same employer pays higher wages thinking about good and well-being of his employee who is working for him, then it is said to be a moral act. If the employer pays higher wages as per the agreement, as per the bond made between the employer and the employee, then it is a compulsion. Then an act done with compulsion is also not a moral act, because this act is done because of the agreement. The employer will fear that if I don't follow the agreement, then the employee will leave my office and go. So this is out of fear and compulsion. So it is not a moral act. Coming to the fifth point in your textbook, if you happen to see the fifth point in your textbook, for an act to be moral, there should be no self-interest. There should be no self-interest behind it. Shakespeare said that love born out of profit motive is no love. Love born out of profit motive is no love. Example, if a man marries a lady with an intention to give her a life, then it is a moral act. But if the same man marries a lady because she is rich, wealthy, and that he will lead a comfortable life with the wealth of the lady, he will lead a happy life, then his act is said to be immoral. If an action is done for the sake of doing good, then it is moral action. Lastly, Gandhiji gives the example of Saint Francis Xavier, who passionately prayed that his mind might always remain pure. He used to pray. He prayed not because he would go to heaven after death. He didn't have this intention. He never prayed that. He never prayed because if he prays then he will be in heaven. He never prayed because of that. He only prayed because he felt it was man's duty to pray to God. He only felt that it was man's duty to pray to God. So his act is said to be moral. Also, the great saint Mother Teresa wished to have a torch in her right hand. Saint Mother Teresa had a torch in her right hand. Why did she have this? Because she wanted to burn the glories of heaven. Mother Teresa wanted to burn the glories of heaven. Also, she had a vessel of water in her left hand. That was to extinguish the fires of hell. So, men could serve God without the fear of hell. Her message to humanity was to serve God, love God without the fear of hell and without the temptation of heavenly bliss. Her message to humanity was to serve God from love alone, without fear of hell and without temptation of heavenly bliss. So children, this is all about moral action. The author has given a number of examples in order to explain what action is said to be a moral action. Hope you all have understood the summary of the poem. Coming to the examination point of view, questions like what is moral act? An act done with no intention and which is free from selfish interests and done with own determination is called a moral act. Question may be like, what is an immoral act? An act done with selfish motive, personal gain and with no intention of good to others is an immoral act. Question may be like, what is conventional behavior? We usually act in a traditional and ordinary manner in our day-to-day life with the prevailing circumstances. We act in a traditional and ordinary manner. Such behavior is said to be conventional behavior. Then what is a mechanical act or what is intentional act? And a mechanical act is just to carry out the orders given by the higher authorities to perform our duties. Intentional act is an act done with an intention to earn a name, fame or wealth. So with some intention we do an act. What does Mahatma Gandhi say about man's greed? This is an important question. Mahatma Gandhi says that earth has enough resources for man's needs. For a man's need, the earth has enough resources, but it does not have resources for his greed. Man is greedy, never self-satisfied. He wants again more and more. So Gandhiji says, earth has enough for every man's need, but not enough for man's greed. He means that earth can provide enough food for man, but not for his greed. There is one more 3-mark or 4-mark question. Explain 5 criteria considered by Gandhiji to decide an action as moral. So here you have to explain. An act must spring from the own will. An act must be without fear or compulsion. There should be no self-interest behind an act. There should be no selfish intention. An act should not be mechanical. It should not be for self-comfort, for name, for fame, for wealth. You have to explain all these points, giving example for each. The next question may be like, what are the examples given by Gandhiji to state moral acts should be free from free and compulsion? So you have to give example. Person waking up early in the morning to go to his office, or you getting up early to go to your school. Person who is rich but leads a simple life. The employer who is giving higher wages to his employees. The employer who is giving work for his employee. Such examples you have to give for this answer. How does Gandhiji explain all good actions need not be moral? So this is also an important question where you have to start with Gandhiji, and Gandhiji says an act depends on one's intention in doing it. It should be from within us. The person's feeling for the poor, whether it is out of pity or whether it is for his name and fame, that has to be explained. Then a question may be like, why does Gandhiji say that moral action should be done without compulsion? The same answer asked in a different ways. One more important reference to context is Mother Teresa holds a torch in her right hand and a vessel of water in the left. It will be asked for reference to context, wherein you have to write in 2 paragraphs. And it may be in the form of a question also. Why does Saint Mother Teresa is said to hold a torch in her right hand, a vessel of water in the left hand, and what is the message to humanity? So these are the questions which may appear from the lesson, what is moral action? So hope the lesson is clear. You have understood the summary. Examination point of view is clear. Hope you all have understood. Do like, share and subscribe the channel for further videos. Thank you one and all.